Hey, welcome to Ontology Explained. I'm Casey Hart, philosopher and ontologist, and this is going to be a quick video today. And it's a quick video because I'm going to give you a series of elevator pitches. In reading some questions down below in the comments on various videos and getting some emails and LinkedIn messages and things like that, I'm seeing a number of common questions that are dropping through. And one of those in particular is just, okay, what are the questions that your manager and coworkers and people often ask you at work, and how do you relate to them? How do you evangelize the ontology and socialize what's going on? So in this video, I've got the 5 most frequently asked questions that I get, and I'm going to give you my short answer to them. Question 1, what are ontologies? This is a big one. Maybe even before that is like, wait, did you say oncology or ontology? Right. No matter where you work, if you are an ontologist, there's someone at your place of business that doesn't even know what an ontology is, and that's totally fine. Again, like a decade ago, I didn't know that ontologist was a real job, so it's okay. You want to bring people in and welcome them. And I've made a long video on what are ontologies. I'll link that below in the description. But here's my 1-2-minute elevator pitch. I say ontologies are 3 things. They are languages. They're languages that you can express your data into. They're a vocabulary. Second, they are models. They're descriptions of the way that reality is, the sorts of entities and things that our business cares about, because this stems from ontology and philosophy, which is the study of that which exists. For a healthcare company, what do they care about? Patients and payers and providers. And then the third thing that ontologies are graphs. We have nodes connected by edges, and these are mathematical entities. And those mathematical entities are really useful because then we can do the kinds of objective things we might want to do to measure the health of our ontology. We can figure out how long the paths are, or how connected various nodes are, things like that. Second question they asked me, how can ontologies help me? And here, it's going to be a long practical question, and it's going to depend a little bit on exactly who's asking me. But the first approach is always ontologies convey understanding. So anytime you've got data and you want to not just give answers back, but give answers that understand and process the data the way a smart human would, ontologies are going to give you that understanding. That's why they're so tied into semantics and meaning. Those things go hand in hand. Now, that sounds abstract and wishy-washy and fine. I think that's a fair criticism of that response. And so I'm always going to move into next, what are the problems that you're dealing with? And I'm going to get as concrete and practical with specific things that the person asking me this question might be able to relate to. So absent that, maybe I point to some past applications and things that I've built that leverage understanding, maybe something like projecting the number of nurses that you're going to need to have in an emergency department. And maybe you need to have an extra nurse more than you would normally think. Why? Well, because we know we have one patient who's a psych patient, and so they're going to need a 1-to-1 nurse ratio in that particular room. So you'll need more than you'd typically need on a Thursday. Something like that, where I take data and I give you an answer, but I don't just give you an answer. I give you an answer that has the meaning and the understanding of why I come to that answer. Third question that people ask me, can't I just use Python instead? Or can't I just use a relational database instead? Whatever their pet tool project application is. And this is a pet peeve question for me because I think I've been asked it in bad faith a number of times, where they're like, aren't ontologies stupid? Isn't Python just better than ontologies? So issues here, bunch of them. And I'm going to try and keep my cool, first of all, because that's a pet peeve question, right? But if what they're asking is, could I implement this using a different technology? The answer is almost always sure. There are lots of different tools and lots of different ways to implement things. And to me, it's no slight on an ontology that you could implement the same thing using a relational database somewhere. That said, different tools have strengths and weaknesses. And ontology strengths are things that confer understanding, and they allow us to use the open world assumption and not make the unique names assumption, and allow us to handle a changing and growing schema in time. It's a flexible model of the world that conveys that understanding. And that's harder to get in some of these other tool sets. So yes, maybe you could implement it in another way, but I don't think those tools are going to be as well designed in these ways. and then we can just be clear and even-handed about it. I'm not fighting with, some Python programmer to say only my tool works and yours never could. It's that we have a bunch of different options. What are the pros and cons of using each of those options? Another thing that I think is really important to bring up here is if you have two solutions to a problem, right, and you could take A or you could take B, it's not a slight to say that there was an alternative solution. If I built you something that works, let's just go ahead and use it. What's the reason not to use this right now? So you can sort of put the question back on them a little bit. Yes, we could have done it another way. Is there something that you don't think is successful about this implementation and why? And maybe they've got something good to share there. By all means, let's enter into that discussion. Fourth question. So what does your ontology know anyway? Like, what does it know about LeBron James, or those sorts of things? And this question is such a vital question that I made another long video about it. So I'll link that below in the description as well. But again, this is the 2-minute elevator pitch. They're going to ask me that. So the first thing I'm going to say is if I know what it knows about those things, I'll just say it, or I'll go find that node and I'll say, look, we can illuminate these sorts of things about it. But what I really want to get at is why are they asking that question? And usually they say, what do you know about this? Because they have an application they want to build and they want to know how soon could you help me by building that application with your ontology? And so I'll say, oh yeah, we know some things about that. Why are you interested in that? Right? And sort of turn it back so that I can be constructive in helping to build the tool that will make their life easier. And if I can't make their life easier, then getting straight at that question, I can say, oh yeah, well, we're going to run into some issues there so that I can sort of nip that in the bud anyway. So be clear about why do they want to know and address that more so than trying to focus on like really trying to build up the case. Oh, we know so much about this thing. Other people who might be interested in my slightly longer spiel, then I might say something about evaluating how smart the ontology is about this is a tricky question. And it's tricky in exactly the same way that it's tricky to say how much does your 7th grader know should they graduate to 8th grade, something like that. Right? Well, what are we going to do? We might try and count the facts, but it's hard to count facts, so we probably run some tests. So if you want to know how smart I think the ontology is, look at these regression tests that we're running. These are things that we have as sort of like staples that the ontology has to know that. Of course, it knows more than those things, but hopefully they're representative of showing you that we have a really functional and useful model that we've built up. And then the last question that is very tricky and can be a pitfall to you if you haven't done the prep work is, when will your ontology be complete? And this one, again, think about why they're asking that question. And if this person is your manager, then you better have some clear answers about how soon you're going to be, quote unquote, done. But what does it really mean to be done? You need to know what the goal of your ontology is. If your goal for your ontology is to take all of the knowledge that your institution has about a particular topic and put it into the graph, then that's a really hard task, even if you have a pretty small organization with a pretty narrow domain, right? What is it going to take me to say all that I can possibly say about how oil rigs operate from, pick a large, ExxonMobil's perspective or something like that? There's a ton of knowledge there. What if we have something very specific that's like, I have a keyboard manufacturing company? Maybe that's simple enough to get all of a certain set of facts into. But if you're just saying I'm getting all of the knowledge, the answer is going to be a long time, right? It's a long time till you get all of the knowledge into the ontology. And that's not the answer that you want to give somebody. Although you do want to make sure that they understand that we have big goals and it's a big task to take all the company's knowledge about this. And that's why the ontology is so valuable, because it's not just going to hold 5 or 6 facts. It's going to hold all of the company's knowledge, or as much of it as we can get in there. So don't sell yourself short, but also stay practical. So what they're asking is not when are you going to be done with all of the possible knowledge in there, but they're going to say what's your next milestone, right? What is the next application that you're powering? What are the next set of regression tests that you need to have working? What are the next sort of practical knowledge that you're going to have in the system? And when is that going to be done? And if you don't know the answer to that question at any given point in time, you need to stop and revise what you're doing, because someone's going to ask you, how are you showing value? When is that value done? And if you don't have an answer to that question, then you're in trouble. So get yourself squared away there. maybe you have a good PM who helps keep you straight on those things. But if you're an IC or an ontologist without so much guidance, you need to set clear deadlines for yourself. And that's not even that ontology specific of a piece, right? That is like for anybody anywhere. If you've got tasks that you're doing, think, what are my immediate goals? What are my midterm and long-term goals? What do I need to have for them to be done? And how long do I think that's going to take? Those are reasonable questions that all of us should have at any point in time for the work that we're doing. Beautiful. So that's 5 questions. What are ontologies? Languages, models, mathematical structures, and graphs. How can they help me? They convey understanding of my data, and anything that leverages that understanding is better off with them. Why can't I use Python or something instead? You could. Let's talk about the different comparative values of the tools and why I think this ontology is going to give us not just good value here, but even more in the long term. What does your ontology know anyway? Here are the regression tests. Here are the applications we're powering right now. And when will it be complete? Next Thursday, I hope. Hope you found this helpful. Any pushback you have to those answers? Any other questions that you guys get frequently or questions that you have for me as an ontologist? Drop them below in the comments. I look forward to responding to them. Really appreciate all of the back and forth I've gotten from people. It's been still lovely. So let's keep it going. Let's stay positive and have a fabulous rest of your day. I'll see you for the next video.